Hello, I am Kelsey Ellis. I'm the Assistant Director at the Salt Lake City Arts Council, and I manage the City Arts Grants Program. This video will provide an overview of the City Arts Grants Program guidelines and application process. If you have questions that are not answered during this video, or if you have specific questions about your application, please feel free to contact me. Now, if you have questions about navigating the grant software, that's the online process where you complete your application, there is another video posted on our website, which is at saltlakearts.org. All right, first an overview of the City Arts Grants Program. For the past few years, the Salt Lake Arts Council Foundation has received $325,000 from Salt Lake City to manage the City Arts Grants Program. The expected budget for the next fiscal year is the same. So budget-wise, we're really projecting a year very similar to last year. So eligibility requirements, these are for all grant categories that your projects or your programs must take place in Salt Lake City. Now that's Salt Lake City, not Salt Lake County or the Wasatch Front. The boundaries really need to be within Salt Lake City as we are using Salt Lake City funds. If you have questions, slccouncil.com is really, I think, the best resource for determining city limits as well as the districts within Salt Lake City. It's on the homepage of the Salt Lake City Council homepage. Now, all applications must submit a budget showing matching funds for the requested amount of at least 1-to-1. This match may be through cash, earned income, private or public support, or through a combination of these resources. So if you have a project that is requesting, say, $5,000, the total budget for your project should be no less than $10,000. And finally, funding for your projects or anything that you are submitting for funding for must occur between September 1st and August 31st. All right, additional eligibility requirements for the grant categories. In general support, you must be a 501c3 nonprofit arts organization for at least 3 years. Your primary purpose needs to be arts programming, arts support, or arts services. You need to have an office that is located within Salt Lake City and paid administrative staff. If you are applying in project support or arts learning, you must be a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You do not need to be an arts-specific organization, but your project, of course, needs to be supporting an arts project or arts activities. You can also apply if you are an artist or a group of artists. Now, all projects submitted in these categories must have a community component or some outreach effort. Providing services to the community. The Arts Council does not offer artist fellowships. So that is something to keep in mind if you are applying as an individual artist. Right, submitting more than one application, applicants really can only submit one application per grant year, per grant category. Now, the exception to this is applicants who wish to submit an arts learning application for an arts education project. That would be in addition to a general support or project support application. The Grants Committee and the City Arts Grants Program prioritizes arts education and arts education projects, so that's why there is an exception in the case if you're submitting an arts learning application. If you have questions, or really if you are considering submitting 2 applications, always a good idea to reach out to me. I can review that with you, talk you through where the funding needs to go and additional eligibility requirements if you have those questions. All right, the review process. So after the grant deadline, I will review each application to ensure it's complete. So incomplete applications are not going to be reviewed by our Grants Committee. By ordinance, the Grants Committee is composed of at least 5 board members. And that's what we currently have, are 5 members from the Arts Council Foundation's board. The Grants Committee reviews all of the applications by category. And review meetings are scheduled for each category, and recommendations are based on the comprehensive discussions that happen at those meetings and the merits of each application. Now, each year, the number of applications that are submitted varies, so this has the potential to have an impact on an organization's awarded amount from year to year. So we don't have a separate budget for each grant category. That $325,000 that I mentioned earlier is the total budget for all grant categories. So if you think about it, if the same amount of funding is available from one year to the next, as it is currently projected, but the pool of applicants grows, and a majority of those applicants merit funding, then some organizations are going to feel the impact of that. The Grants Committee works really hard to ensure that there's support for all types of projects, whether they're small grassroots projects or large established organizations. So really we work on balancing that every year at those meetings, and that is something that has the potential to impact funding levels from one year to the next. Additionally, we might have new committee members each year. So something to keep in mind as you're writing your application, the more specific details you can provide in your application will be very helpful, especially for those new members who just need to get to know your organization. If they haven't read an application from you in the previous year, the more information you can provide, clear details, that will be very helpful for them. As I mentioned before, the Grants Committee prioritizes arts education applications and those applications which demonstrate need. Also of high importance, presentation of a balanced and detailed budget. Our committee does spend a lot of time reviewing budgets and having discussions about them. So ensure that your budget is really a complement to the narrative that you're submitting. There's also importance on the description of the impact to the community, as well as the strategies for broadening audience reach. We'll talk about those pieces in the responses on the application in just a little bit, but those are things to keep in mind as you're working through your application. Our Grants Committee understands the need to support the community's organizations through general operating funds as well as project-based funds. And the committee really works diligently to fairly review all applications. They do take their duty very seriously. But when we finish with our review processes, if you have questions, whether you are funded or not, would like feedback or comments, always feel free to reach out to me, and I will be happy to review those things with you, any comments that may have come up in those discussions. Okay, now we're going to look at the application. For general support applicants, you will first be asked 3 questions to ensure eligibility. These are the same 3 eligibility requirements that I mentioned earlier. So if you respond no to any of those questions, your organization is not eligible for general support funding. Again, if you have questions here, if you think that the answer is no, or you need some clarification, just reach out to me, give me a call, we'll walk through that to see if you're eligible. All right, the first part of the application asks for your mission statement and a list of the board of directors. Now, individual artists, you do not need to include a board of directors, and your mission statement will be more about describing your personal mission or experiences that you have had that qualify you for this application. These responses are informative responses, and they're not scored by the Grants Committee, but they will provide context to your application. If you are applying as a general support applicant, these responses will be included later in the organizational description section, not in an applicant information section. All right, now there are 3 sections to all of the applications. We have project description or organization description. And that section, this first piece, I kind of see this as the what of your application. These are the details. This is what you're going to be doing, who's involved. Now the work samples, which are an optional section that come next, those are the how. So those are the demonstrations of how you have completed the description that you have just listed for your projects and programs. And the other section, which is community description, is the why. This is the piece that you will have to provide that emotional appeal, get the grants committee excited for you. And don't spend time on the what, because that's exactly what the project description section is for. Fewer details in community description, more emotional appeal. And really, so the combination of all these three sections provides a complete picture of your request and why it merits support. Okay, so the first section, project name, pretty straightforward there. Funding amount requested. Enter the amount you're requesting between $500 or $10,000 and to $10,000. Ensure that this amount matches the amount you have listed in your budget. And again, you'll want to make sure that the requested amount matches of at least 1-to-1. District. Now this is the city district in which your programming will take place. So as I mentioned before, we're not talking about your state or your federal district or where in the county you'll be providing funding. Additional clarification, slccouncil.com. Great place that you can type in your address and it will show you exactly which district that project will be taking place. Overall, really the committee looks to support programming citywide in all districts when possible. Right, discipline. Of course, select whichever discipline makes the most sense to you. If you have several, if you're doing dance and theater, music and opera, excellent. You can select as many as apply, or you can select multidisciplinary. And keep in mind that all proposed projects must have a community component, outreach effort, or provide a service to the community. This will come up in detail in your response to the value to the community, that question that's in the application. But also keep in mind that if you're applying in literary arts, you must apply for a project that has a clear artistic element. So the Arts Council doesn't fund humanities projects, but does support literary programming which has artistic elements. Another note on discipline. The committee doesn't compare applications by discipline. However, be mindful of the fact that there are many groups conducting programming in the same discipline. And those which have strong applications and stand out from the group will likely see an impact on their funding level. For example, the Grants Committee sees a lot of applications in music, and many of them are all applying in the project support category. So it's a good idea for applicants to really differentiate themselves from similar groups, and that goes beyond simply stating, we are the only group which does X. If you can really demonstrate the impact that you have to the community, why the community needs this particular programming or service that you provide, that's going to be very helpful for the Grants Committee. Okay, project dates. Your projects or your programming must fall between September 1st and August 31st. General support applicants, you do not need to enter dates of programming, but the funds requested must be used during this time period. Okay, so the project description. Let's look at project support and general support first. This response really should include all of the details of the project. Now, again, here it's not best to spend time discussing the impact to the community or your audience, but describing the specific details of the project. The more specific you can be in your description, the better the committee can understand what the requested funds will go to support. And try not to make assumptions as to what the Grants Committee will know, whether it's from previous applications or just assuming they know who you are and what you do. Now, for general support applicants, we ask you to describe your programs and services. This response has a pretty limited character count, so just ensure that you are succinct in your program descriptions. Now, in the next response for general support, we are asking you to describe your goals for 2018-2019. You may choose to describe one specific goal or possibly include a list of goals. Again, the character count here is pretty limited, so just be aware that short and succinct will be your best approach here. The next response is artistic programming and quality. Artistic quality or programming quality. Now, quality will mean something a little bit different to each group. What the committee is looking for is quality of artists, services, or arts education providers. You may choose to describe the selection process that you used or the way in which you evaluate success to demonstrate your artistic quality. Right, now the next section we're asking for numbers. Number of participating artists and total audience. Numbers are evaluated alongside the responses to project description and value to the community. So, meaning it's not entirely about the number of people you serve, but really about the impact to those that you serve. You may have a project that reaches thousands of people on a very limited experience, or you may reach only a few people who have a very in-depth experience. Either approach is fine as long as you describe the impact to those groups. Now, for general support applicants, we also ask you to provide the number of staff and volunteers. You'll be looking to your most recently completed fiscal year to get those numbers. Okay, the work samples. This is the newest portion of our application. We added this to our application last year. And the examples here are intended to demonstrate quality or experience. Now, the committee doesn't want to see a full report here. So if you have a 50-page annual report, that's not as helpful for them in reviewing your application. If you can submit short, relevant examples of your work, again, relevant is the operative word here. So if you are requesting for a project that you have done before, previous examples of that project and the success of those, photos, videos, those are all very helpful. Also ensure that those examples are, again, not just relevant to this application, but relevant to Salt Lake City programming and why it merits funding to the Salt Lake City. Now, if you want to share videos or music samples, please provide a link to a website. Our software, it does have a limited upload file size, which is only 5 megabytes, and that's not going to be enough for your videos. So links to web pages are best, whether that's YouTube or a page on your own organization's website. Now, if you choose to upload files instead of linking to a website, please keep it to 3 samples, and be sure that the file that you upload is a PDF. So if you have images you want to upload, put them into a document that you can save in a PDF file. Okay, the community description section. In this first response of value to the community, this is where you get to describe why you do what you do and why it's important. Don't repeat your response in the project description section. Be sure to describe why this project is important specifically to Salt Lake City and why it's important to Salt Lake City. Again, remember the funds you are requesting come through a contract with the city, and the impact to Salt Lake City specifically will be part of the review discussions. Now, you may consider answering questions such as, why does your organization provide this project? Why is it important that this project take place? Or what is the value to those participating? Keep it specific to the request in the application. So if you're requesting project-based funding, I would suggest steering away from the organization's benefits and keep it to the values of the specific project. You may not also want to spend time talking about, say, the overall value of arts education in those broad general terms. You are talking to individuals who work in arts education, and they do already understand the value of arts education. So really, if you can keep it specific to the value of this project, you don't need to spend this limited character count on describing, arts education in general. Really, I would say this response is your opportunity to get the committee excited for you. So that emotional appeal is a good place right here. Okay, audience and outreach opportunities. These 2 responses may be a little challenging to differentiate as they do go hand in hand. Now, with the audience question, the intent is for you to describe your target audience. Who do you expect to attend? Remembering all programs must be open to the public. Now, the outreach opportunities describe the efforts you will make to broaden your audience. This should include specific examples of how you will reach out to groups or communities which will grow your audience or increase diversity or provide services to underrepresented communities. This response isn't saying how you will get more people to attend, but how you will broaden your audience. And you get to tell us what that means to you, if that's increasing diversity, again, reaching those underrepresented communities, or just getting more people there. Keep it specific, and if you can include trackable methods here, that will be best. saying that you simply offer free tickets to groups doesn't necessarily equate to those groups attending. So while that's an excellent effort and important to outline if that's an effort that you undertake with your programs, but if you can track the success of offering free tickets to the community, that's an even better approach and really demonstrates strong success that you have had in your outreach opportunities. With partnerships, we are looking for descriptions of partnerships to help further demonstrate the project's impact to the community. Now, the Grants Committee views partnerships as commitments beyond cash support. However, if you wish to describe sponsorships, just include a description of how they represent community support for this project. Okay, finally, we're going to look at the budget. The first thing, right down here, I want you to look grant amount requested. Ensure that the amount you're requesting that you have listed at the beginning of your application is listed right here in this box. That's very important. If you don't list the amount requested and your budget balances, you are essentially demonstrating your ability to execute the project without the requested grant funds. So just ensure that that number gets in there and it matches the amount you entered at the beginning of the application. Your total income must equal your total expenses. A balanced budget demonstrates your ability to administer and implement the proposed program. Now, budgets must present matching funds for the requested amount of at least 1-to-1. This match can be through cash, earned income, private or public support, or a combination of these resources. Now, the match cannot be met with other funds received from Salt Lake City Corporation, which could be through the ACE grant category or through a line item in the general fund. That doesn't mean that those funds cannot go to support your project, but you do have to show that those funds are not going to meet the matching requirement. For general support and project support, in-kind contributions are welcome, but they're not going to meet the matching requirement. Now, Arts Learning will accept in-kind facility rental as part of the match, but again, it does have to be an in-kind facility rental. That line, right now we're looking at the project support budget, but for the Arts Learning budget, there is an actual line within the income and the expenses that will have in-kind facility. So just ensure that if it's in-kind, you include it in the budget for the Arts Learning grant category. Comments and explanations are welcome and encouraged. For example, in the artist payment line, if you can tell us how many artists are participating and the amounts that are paid for their time, really that's a stronger budget than one with no description, and it is something the Grants Committee spends time discussing. Now, the Salt Lake City Arts Council values paying artists for professional wages, and organizations that pay their artists for their services will be given priority. So that line in particular is something that the Grants Committee will look at and likely have a discussion about. Now, ensure that the budget reflects your narrative. So if you have listed anything specific in your narrative about where funds will be coming from or how they will be expended, just make sure that that correlates with what you have listed here. Those two pieces go hand in hand. The Grants Committee will look at your narrative and the budget together to determine overall funding recommendations. All right, so the deadlines for the City Arts Grants category coming up in April, and then also general support and project support will be in June. The mini grants will be announced later this year and with deadlines that are on a quarterly basis. All applications for the City Arts Grants program must be submitted online. Again, there is a video outlining navigating the online system and creating an online profile that's at our website at saltlakearts.org. So if you have questions about creating that account, you'll just want to go there. And finally, if you have specific questions, if they weren't answered during this video, always feel free to contact me. There's my contact information. Thank you so much for spending the time to view this video. I hope it's been helpful, and good luck.